He made decent money. He had a good job. So why did debt keep winning every single month? Marcus, 38, earns $4,100 a month. He is not poor. He is not reckless. He works hard, shows up on time, and keeps his head down. But every single month he ends up with nothing, staring at a growing credit card balance that follows him like a shadow. Before we dive into the exact steps Marcus took to escape this cycle, I want you to look at your own bank balance today and ask yourself if you are truly working for yourself or just working to pay off your past. If you are ready to change that, let us uncover the 7 habits that actually work. Marcus never learned about money. He grew up watching his parents live paycheck to paycheck, borrowing from one card to pay another, and he simply assumed that was just how life worked. It was the background noise of his childhood. As an adult, he paid the minimum on his credit cards, avoided looking at his bank balance whenever he could, and told himself things would get better when he finally got a raise. He hit every career milestone he set for himself. He got the raise. Nothing changed. More money did not fix the problem. It just made the problem slightly bigger. He found new ways to spend, new subscriptions to subscribe to, and new debts to accumulate, all while the feeling of being trapped grew heavier. One Sunday morning, while clearing out a pile of old mail, Marcus found an old receipt from 3 years ago. It was for a simple meal, but the interest on the card he used to pay for it had compounded again and again. He sat down and did the math. He realized he had been paying $180 a month in credit card interest alone. That was money that bought him absolutely nothing. It was money tossed into a furnace. That number, $180, became his breaking point. It was a cold, sharp realization that his labor was subsidizing someone else's profit. That was the day Marcus decided to fight back. He realized that he had to stop playing the game he had been losing for decades. He started with the first habit, which he called naming his money. Every dollar had to get a job before payday arrived. Marcus started using a simple notebook. He would write down his income at the top, followed by his rent, food, transport, debt, and savings. Nothing moved out of his account without a name attached to it. If a dollar did not have a job, it did not get spent. It was the end of the era where he would finish the month wondering where his paycheck had vanished. The second habit was the most difficult to implement, but it became the cornerstone of his peace of mind. He decided to pay himself first. Before a single utility bill was paid, he would move $150 into a separate savings account. It was non-negotiable. Even in the tightest months, when the rent felt looming and the grocery budget was thin, he moved that money. He learned that if he waited until the end of the month to save what was left, there was never anything left. By paying himself first, he turned his savings into a bill that had to be met. The third habit was about momentum. Marcus decided to kill one debt at a time. He sat down and listed all of his debts from the smallest balance to the largest. He stopped trying to pay a little bit toward everything, and instead threw every extra dollar at the smallest debt, while continuing to pay the minimums on the rest. The first debt was cleared in 3 months. That small win, that empty line on his spreadsheet, changed everything. The psychological weight of seeing one creditor disappear gave him the fuel to attack the next one. It was no longer about interest rates. It was about the thrill of closing accounts one by one. The fourth habit was the 24-hour rule on every non-essential purchase over $30. Marcus realized that his biggest leaks were not the big bills, but the small, impulsive things. If an item cost more than $30 and was not strictly food or a necessary bill, Marcus had to wait 24 hours before buying it. He kept a list on his phone. Almost every time when he woke up the next morning, the urgency had evaporated. Most of his impulses were emotional, not practical, and the passage of time was the perfect filter to keep his money in his pocket. The fifth habit was to automate the good and add friction to the bad. He set up his savings transfer to be fully automatic on payday, so he never had to make the decision to save. Conversely, he made the wrong choices intentionally hard. He took his credit cards out of his wallet and locked them in a bottom drawer in his home office. If he wanted to use them, he had to physically go get them and type in the numbers. That extra minute of effort gave him the space to think, which prevented countless unnecessary charges. He made it easy to succeed and difficult to fail. The sixth habit was the implementation of one no-spend day per week, specifically Wednesdays. Marcus pledged to spend $0 on that day. No coffee on the way to work, no delivery apps at night, no browsing online shopping sites. He had to pack his lunch and prepare his own coffee. Over a month, this saved him between $80 and $120 consistently. It was a small challenge, but it taught him that he could go an entire day without needing to consume something, which was a revolutionary change in his mindset. The seventh and final habit was his weekly review. Every Sunday morning, for 10 minutes, Marcus performed a check-in. He opened his banking app and looked at every single transaction from the previous week. He labeled them as either progress or a leak. If it was a leak, he adjusted his plan for the week ahead. This 10-minute routine kept him grounded and alert. He was no longer hiding from his finances. He was the captain of the ship, steering it exactly where he wanted it to go. The results began to manifest slowly, then all at once. By month 3, he cleared his first debt, a $640 credit card balance. By month 7, he wiped out a $1,200 medical bill that had been haunting him for years. By month 11, his emergency fund hit $1,000 for the first time in his life. The security of that money was a feeling he had never known. Finally, by month 14, the final debt was paid. Marcus owed nothing to anyone. He did not get a promotion. He did not hit the lottery. He did not win anything. He simply changed 7 daily habits. The habits were free, but the results were priceless. Marcus sits at the same kitchen table today. It is the same chair he sat in when he was drowning in interest payments and stress. But the credit card statements are gone. There is just a notebook, a pen, and a growing number in his savings account. He learned that wealth is not about what you earn. It is about how you steward what you have. You do not need all 7 habits at once to change your life. Start with one, just one, and let the momentum do the rest. Which of these 7 habits will you start with this week? Drop your choice in the comments below, because your journey toward financial freedom starts with a single, intentional decision. The silence in the room is different now. It is no longer the suffocating weight of anxiety that follows a late payment notice, but the quiet, steady hum of peace. Marcus flips through the pages of his worn notebook, seeing the scribbles of a man who once thought money was a predator hunting him down. Now, he sees numbers as tools, cold and neutral, waiting for his instruction. The transformation was never about the math, though the math was undeniably satisfying. It was about the psychological shedding of an identity that had been built on scarcity. For years, Marcus had defined himself by the lack of surplus, the lack of options, the lack of a future that did not feel like a tightening noose. But as he looks at the balance on his phone, he realizes he has fundamentally altered the chemistry of his own life. There is a common misconception that financial freedom is a destination marked by a specific dollar amount. People wait for the arbitrary milestone of $100,000 or $1 million before they allow themselves to breathe. But Marcus understands now that freedom is a state of mind that precedes the capital. It begins the moment you stop deceiving yourself about where your money goes. Most people live in a state of self-imposed ignorance, hiding their receipts from their own eyes, afraid to witness the hemorrhage of their own potential. By committing to the 7th habit, the weekly review, Marcus had effectively ended his own era of denial. He had moved from a victim of circumstance to an architect of his own reality. The beauty of these 7 habits lies in their refusal to rely on willpower alone. Willpower is a finite resource, a candle that flickers and dies when the wind of life blows too hard. Systems, however, are resilient. When Marcus implemented the habit of adding friction to bad spending, he was not relying on his moral fiber to avoid temptation. He was relying on a structural barrier he had built for himself. He had effectively outsourced his discipline to his own rules. This is the secret that the wealthy keep hidden. They do not necessarily possess more willpower than the average person. They simply possess better frameworks. They have automated their success so that the path of least resistance is the path of accumulation rather than consumption. Consider the nature of lifestyle creep. It is the silent thief that stalks every promotion and paycheck increase. When Marcus eventually received a cost of living adjustment at his work, the old version of him would have immediately upgraded his life. A better car, more expensive dinners, a subscription service he did not need. But because he had spent 14 months anchoring his identity to the 7 habits, he viewed that extra money not as an invitation to spend, but as an opportunity to accelerate his independence. He treated the raise as if it never happened, funneling the difference directly into his investments. He had learned the most critical lesson of all. Your income is a tool for building your life, but your expenses are the walls of the cage you trap yourself in. By keeping the walls static while the income grew, he effectively bought his way out of the cage. Many people look at their finances and see a tangled web of obligations, but Marcus now sees a garden. Some plants represent necessary growth, others are weeds that need to be pulled. The mistake most people make is trying to pull all the weeds at once, becoming overwhelmed and discouraged when the task proves too arduous. Marcus remembers the early days, how tempting it was to try and overhaul his entire life in a single weekend. He had tried that before, only to revert to his old patterns by Tuesday. The 7 habits worked because they were incremental. He did not build a mansion. He laid one brick perfectly every single day. The brick was not the goal, but the perfection of the placement was. There is a profound dignity in self-control. Marcus reflects on the social pressure to perform status. We live in an era where every transaction is a performance, a signal sent to the world about who we are and what we value. The coffee shops, the designer clothes, the flashy tech, it is all a language of belonging. By opting out of that performance, Marcus initially felt a sting of isolation. He felt like he was missing out on the collective vanity of his peers. But as the debt evaporated, that feeling of isolation was replaced by an immense sense of autonomy. He stopped needing to signal his status, because his security spoke for itself. He did not need the world to validate his success through shallow markers of wealth. He found that the less he seemed to have, the more he actually possessed. Think about the long-term compounding effect of these small, intentional choices. It is not just about the money sitting in the bank. It is about the compounding of character. Every time Marcus chose to deny an impulse, he was building the muscle of sovereignty. Every time he sat down for his weekly review, he was sharpening his vision. These tiny victories layered upon one another until they became a personality trait. He no longer had to struggle to save. He had simply become a person who saves. The habit had transcended the conscious mind and had become part of his subconscious identity. He was no longer trying to change his life. He was living a life that had already been changed. If you are currently sitting where Marcus sat, surrounded by unpaid bills, consumed by the crushing weight of interest, and paralyzed by the fear that you will never get ahead, understand this. Your current situation is not a life sentence. It is a data point. It is a reflection of past decisions, and you have the power to change the next data point starting today. You do not need to be a financial genius to master your money. You do not need a high-paying job or a sudden inheritance. You need the courage to be honest with yourself, the consistency to follow a simple plan, and the patience to let time perform its magic. The journey toward financial freedom is not a sprint. It is an endurance race against your own impulses. It is the refusal to be distracted by the shiny objects of instant gratification. It is the deliberate cultivation of a garden that will eventually provide shade for you and those you love. When Marcus looks at his notebook again, he sees not just numbers, but the ledger of his dignity. He sees a man who decided that his future self was worth more than his current desires. He sees a man who, against all odds and the prevailing winds of a consumerist culture, decided to swim upstream. The path is open to you. It does not require a change of scenery or a change of luck. It requires only the pen in your hand and the resolve to track what matters. You have the power to stop the leak. You have the power to redirect the flow. You have the power to rewrite the ending of your story. The 7 habits are not a theory. They are a blueprint, tested and proven in the crucible of real life. They are simple enough to start today and profound enough to change everything by this time next year. The choice is not whether you can afford to do these things. The choice is whether you can afford to continue living as you are. Stop waiting for a sign. Stop waiting for more money. And stop waiting for the perfect moment. The clock is ticking, and every second is either an investment in your freedom or a tax on your potential. Pick up the pen. Open the app. Make the decision. Your life is waiting for you to take the wheel. Consider the mechanics of your daily existence with the same clinical precision an architect applies to a skyscraper. Small structural weaknesses, if left unaddressed, do not merely remain stagnant. They expand under the weight of time, eventually compromising the entire frame. Financial instability operates by the same principle. That daily coffee, that subscription service you rarely utilize, or the impulse purchase made to soothe a momentary pang of dissatisfaction, these are not insignificant trifles. They are the structural cracks that drain your foundation. When you begin to track these outflows, you transition from a passive spectator of your financial decline to an active engineer of your prosperity. It is an act of reclamation. You are literally buying back your time, your peace of mind, and your autonomy from a marketplace designed to keep you indebted and distracted. Begin by auditing your environment. Look at the items in your home that serve no purpose other than to occupy space and satisfy a fleeting ego need. Real wealth is not found in the accumulation of things, but in the clarity of your ledger and the security of your reserves. When you strip away the camouflage of consumerism, you are left with the raw materials of your life. This is where the work truly begins. It is the practice of delayed gratification, the quiet discipline of saying no to the present to ensure the abundance of the future. This is not about deprivation, it is about prioritization. It is about choosing the mountain peak over the valley floor. As you move forward, recognize that your progress will not always be linear. There will be months where the numbers falter, where unexpected costs demand your resources, and where the urge to revert to old habits pulls at your resolve. These moments are not failures. They are the resistance training required to build your character. Stay the course, keep the ledger, and remember that you are building a legacy, one entry at a time. The power you hold today is the only power that matters. Use it wisely.